our kids aren't just exploring the outdoors, but they're learning work ethic and perseverance. They're learning patience by just waiting for the bird sound, waiting for the insect to come in. They are learning how to be kind humans. And I think that is so important as well, that we are developing kids at that age to respect their environment around them, not only indoors, but outdoors.
Welcome to Healthier, Happier, Smarter, connecting with Wisconsin's outdoors through learning, stories, and communities. My name is Jaeden.
And my name's Xia.
What happens when learning moves outside the classroom?
You get healthier students, stronger communities, and deeper connections to nature.
Healthier, Happier, Smarter explores outdoor and environmental education across Wisconsin.
From schoolyards and forests to youth-led climate action and community programs. Join us as we share the stories shaping the future of learning and the outdoors. Healthier, Happier, Smarter is brought to you by the Wisconsin Association for Environmental Education in partnership with the James E. Dutton Foundation, a charitable foundation providing financial support to organizations working on projects which benefit wildlife, animal causes, environmental preservation, and outdoor education. Additional financial support comes from the Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin and WAEE members and donors with in-kind support from Green and Healthy Schools, Wisconsin.
Welcome to another episode of Healthier, Happier, Smarter, Wisconsin Voices on the Power of Nature.
Today we are talking with the amazing Robin Hanson from the fantastic Maple Grove Charter School and the wonderful Sandy Benton from FIELD Edventures. Maple Grove Charter School is located in Athens, Wisconsin, engaging students from kindergarten through 5th grade in a hands-on approach into project development through cultural connections to our traditions, opportunities, and our greater community. FIELD Edventures is a nonprofit organization started by teachers for teachers to explore the outdoors, foster inquiry, and engage learners through discovery.
Welcome, Robin and Sandy. I'm so excited to talk with you both today. We are looking forward to learning about Maple Grove's efforts in creating a healthier, happier, and smarter learning environment for students and staff. But before we get into that, I'd love to learn a little bit more about yourselves, what brought you to education, and perhaps one thing you love to do outdoors. I'm going to kick it to you, Robin.
Thank you, Xia and Jaeden. It's great to be here. I am Robin Hanson, teaching principal at Maple Grove Charter School. And a little fun fact, I attended Maple Grove when I was a student. So at that time, it was kindergarten through 6th grade. It was not a charter school, but it was still all the things that still encompass Maple Grove. The wonderful environment, the nature piece that we were able to do. When I was in 1st grade, we also got to tap trees and be outdoors. And coming from a farm family myself, those were all things that I knew and enjoyed doing. So ever since I was in 2nd grade at Maple Grove, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be the principal of Maple Grove one day. And so I started my education journey through Merrill Schools with the help of the Fromm Scholarship that was offered to me by attending Maple Grove Charter School, and received my degree and taught in Merrill for 15 years before moving out to Maple Grove to be the teaching principal out there, and have been out there for 5 years now. And it is a wonderful place. And I think what really brings learning to kids, what learning should be and what school should be. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. Is there one thing that you love to do outdoors? I know it's hard to pick because I know personally I love to do so many things, but maybe your one favorite.
I would say my favorite is probably just hiking through the woods and walking through the woods. Especially enjoy doing it with the kids because of the exploration, the creativity that they find in the woods and the things they discover and they think is pretty awesome. So being outdoors with them, hiking and just discovering things is probably my favorite.
Thank you so much for sharing. Sandy, I'd love to hear more about you and your start to the education pathway you're on today.
I'm following up along with Robin. I too grew up on a dairy farm, and I lived 2 miles from where I grew up and literally had very close contact with the land starting at a very early age. So being outside is just part of who I am, and to be able to extend that into the classroom and taking the classroom outdoors is very meaningful. I became a teacher after thinking that I actually wanted to be an attorney at one point. And then when I was in college and helping another student out with some mathematical problem solving, I realized I kind of have a knack for helping others learn. So my view of education as a career, that kind of took that pathway and I explored it, and here I am. And in terms of being an environmental educator, that also came through an unusual twist that I actually am a reading specialist by training. And although I loved helping students to learn and to learn to read and love books, the thing that a colleague and I discovered is like our students at the end of the year, the things that they always remarked on as memorable and most meaningful to them were the events and experiences where we had taken them outdoors. So a colleague and I, we started our own environmental charter school, Fox River Academy in Appleton. And we said, well, what would that look like if we could do that, more frequently on a daily basis, weekly at minimum? And that was my pathway to environmental education and taking kids outside. So now I'm in a position where I'm no longer in my own classroom, but I can work with educators around the state, like the ones at Robin's Maple Grove Charter School, and been all across the state. And this model works well, urban, suburban, and rural schools. Oh, favorite thing to do outside is anything that's movement. So biking, hiking, and especially being on the waterways with kayaks and canoes.
I love a good kayaking. I just got some in this last weekend and excited to start my summer off strong. And thank you for the background, both of you. I love hearing about the different pathways that people take into education or into their careers and how it transforms throughout those years. I know everyone starts in a completely different space, and yet somehow we all end up in the same space at the end. And so it's wonderful hearing from both of you.
So, Sandy, I would love to start the conversation off just by talking a little bit more about FIELD Edventures. And for our listeners, if I'm not pronouncing it enough, it's ED. It's a fun little pun. I like that. So tell us a little bit more about FIELD Edventures, providing educational coaching and place-based learning to Wisconsin schools. So just giving us a bit more about your perspective and how you support educators in schools, and just a bit of a comparison about how professional development is a bit different than it's traditionally offered.
Well, sure. So FIELD Edventures, as you had introduced us, we're founded by teachers and for teachers. Either we are working in classrooms with teachers where we take a look at ways that we can take learning outdoors using the curriculum that they already have in place, and also using the local school site. We call that near nature. We understand there's some really fabulous natural areas around this whole state that many of them, though, require advance notice, hiring and paying for a bus. So there's limitations when you take students off school sites. Now, not to discredit those off-site nature centers or state parks and those spaces, they certainly offer opportunities for students to interact with ecosystems, and species they're not familiar with. However, what they do have available is on their school grounds. Every school has the sun, shade, there's heat, light, there's water, and we have plants and we have animals. And I don't like to use the word just. So sometimes those animals are very small. They might be ants or spiders, birds flying overhead. Plants might be things that are deemed weeds in some people's yards. However, there is life on every playground. I've yet to find one where there isn't. And what we can do with the curriculum is, what is the goal of the teaching and what are the standards that need to be addressed? And I'll introduce the environmental literacy and sustainability standards if the teachers aren't yet familiar with them. And we'll look for ways that we can use that playground or use that school site and neighborhood as the context for the learning that happens, so that it's not just taking what's happening in the classroom to an outside setting, which there's research to support that works really well too. But what's available in this space that allows that learning to happen with the nature that is there. And then we can move into some other stewardship projects if we want to attract more wildlife or we want to have more diverse plant life. That's a project that the teachers and the students can take on with a FIELD Edventures coach. So that's the larger coaching experience. We also offer professional learning in terms of we'll write curriculum. We'll help you write curriculum. We will do one-day workshops or multiple-day workshops where maybe, that experience is kind of wrapped up in a bow, and then the educators take that back on their own to implement in their classrooms. So we can do it on a short scale or a much more intensive scale as we've done with Maple Grove Charter School.
I love the philosophy of meeting the teachers in the schools where they're at. I feel like a lot of times in the educational field and the conservation field, it's a lot of making do with what you have. And I like how you're reframing the just. It's not just one thing or just this. It's reframing your own thinking and knowing it's something more than it is. And I think it's something we really have to stick on to, especially in these fields that are very, very sparse in terms of resources. But I love what you guys are doing. It's so awesome.
So, Robin, I'd love to talk a little bit about how you and Sandy met, how the partnership with FIELD Edventures first started, and maybe how that partnership has impacted Maple Grove teachers, students, and curriculum.
Yes, actually, it started initially about 5 years ago when I became principal at Maple Grove Charter School. We had just come on with the school district of Athens. Maple Grove used to be part of another district, and we had attached to Athens School District. And at that time, we learned that we were eligible to apply for a new charter school grant because of the redistricting and being with a new authorizer. So at that time, coming on as a brand new principal, new to the school, new to the staff, new to a district, we were thinking, what is our focus going to be? And I just looked right outside our own doors at school and saw our 25 acres of beautiful forests, fields, wildlife. Everything was right there. And originally the charter school was an EL education charter school with a lot of philosophies around there. And when you redistrict, you can't glom on to the same meaning or the same EL education. So we needed to choose something else. Well, I knew I was coming on as a new principal and new staff. And I'm like, we just need to use what we have here. And we need to embrace this environment. And we are going to focus in on environmental ed. And we also added agri-science because of the farm community that we are from and that Athens is a part of as well. So we did a focus on environmental ed, agri-science. With that, I know how challenging writing curriculum can be and how to integrate it all together. And I was a teaching principal, so I'm also teaching special ed and a principal duties. And I'm like, I can't write curriculum. So I started just asking around, like, are there people out there that can write environmental curriculum? Is there coaching out there? I need some support. So from that, we did receive the grant that first year. So starting my second year of principalship, when we were writing the grant, Sandy's name came up several different times from CISA 9 partners, as well as grant writer partners, and also the Works community, the Wisconsin Charter School community. And they were like, oh, Sandy Benton, she is your coach. She is your lady. So her name came up and I just reached out and I said, hey, here I am. Here's what we have. What can you help us with? What can you do for us coaching? I knew I wanted to use the majority of the grant money for coaching purposes around our literacy curriculum, as well as now creating this environmental agri-science curriculum. And after my conversations with Sandy, I knew that she was the one to do that. So our journey began 4 years ago. The grants changed several times throughout the year, but Sandy always was there to support and say, okay, we'll figure this out. We can do it. And she came up with a plan of coaching with us, driving the long distance to Maple Grove every Friday to do in-person coaching with my staff. And I think that wasn't only beneficial to my staff, but my learners. And Sandy she was right in the environment with us. So she knew exactly what we needed, what to look for. And she gave her the challenge of trying to integrate our literacy curriculum, EL education, in with the environmental ed and all the science standards. And she rose to that challenge and she's like, absolutely. So we had a schedule put together where she coached and did co-coaching with the staff throughout those 3 years that the grant was part of it. She brought the community into our school. We brought us into the community through different venues, different places. And like she was talking about, the ability to go and find just in the community, right out your back door. Not only we have the 25 acres, but we also have community members right by us that we went and explored the history of the Froms right next door to us. And she tied us into that and she was able to reach out. She also initiated our Bio Blitz that we now run every year. And that Bio Blitz brings in experts and community members and brings a full day of our students exploring and learning and hearing from other adults about what is out there, which also leads to different career choices in the future. She also was able to partner with our ag teacher from the middle high school, our Athens Middle High School, who then came in and partnered with some ag lessons as well to tie that into our environment. And through there, we have our chickens and rabbits, and we are able to bring that piece of it along with our maple syrup industry. And some things like that, Sandy learned right along with us. Not knowing a ton about maple syrup herself, she jumped right in and was so excited to learn and know more about it, and then only enhanced what we already had going. So very appreciative to Sandy and to FIELD Edventures for the opportunity. She still keeps in touch with many of our staff. In fact, helped out with our Bio Blitz just this last spring. So just very grateful for the coaching and curriculum that she was able to bring to us.
Sounds like you guys are just going success after success, and it's so awesome to hear. But as with most things, I feel like in conservation and education, and there was, I'm sure, some growing pains in the beginning. So, Robin, could you tell us a little bit about how you built district buy-in, and have there been any efforts from either you in the school or other schools reaching out to increase outdoor learning throughout the district?
Yeah, so at first, just a funny story, when I first approached my superintendent and said, hey, I want to get chickens on the site. She was like, you want what? And I'm like, yeah. And when I got there, there was a little coop out there. There weren't any chickens in it, but there was a coop. And I grew up on a farm, but did not have chickens myself, knew nothing about them. We just had dairy cows. And so she hemmed and hawed for a while and was like, okay. And it's not just having chickens on site and hearing the rooster in the morning. It is the responsibility kids take from feeding them in the morning. The kids are in charge of feeding them and collecting the eggs, and the ability to use the eggs for breakfast and kids knowing where that food is coming from. So that has been an experience. And then it was about a year or two after that, I showed up with some rabbits. And with those rabbits, that came from the class, the kids themselves, the learners themselves. They came to me and said, Mrs. Hanson, we want rabbits here. And I said, I don't think we can do rabbits. And they're like, come on. And I said, well, do the research. Let me know. Tell me what it's going to cost, what we're going to have to do. How do we take care of them? They did it. They took the effort. They initiated the effort. They went through and did the research. They did a whole presentation for me and convinced me to get some rabbits. So we got some rabbits, and then my superintendent showed up and said, hey, what are these? Her and I go back and forth and joke, and I say, so is it goats next? And she's like, oh, wait. So that piece of it, yeah, there was some need for some buy-in. And even being in a new district, we were this outside school that's actually located about 20 miles from the other schools in the Athens School District. So we're out in the middle of Hamburg, Wisconsin. And so we were this kind of outside that not many people knew about. And we were the newbies coming in. So what did we have to offer and who were we? I have to say that the Athens School District, the superintendent, the school board has been tremendously supportive of Maple Grove Charter School from the get-go, with a positive attitude of what we have to bring, why that it's important to learning, why it's important for kids to be outside, and the research behind it that I've been able to present either in board meetings or through conversations has just been very well accepted. And we did go through some hardships right in the beginning where we had to go to referendum. They had taken on a new school and there was already some financial things happening and the district had to go to referendum. And so we did pass that first referendum, but knowing we were coming in as a school with 72 learners my first year. This last year, we had 125, and we will have more than that this next upcoming school year. So we are growing, and we had to go to lottery this year for our kindergarten class because we had 20 additional applicants that we weren't able to take for our kindergarten class. So it's very hard to say, I'm sorry, but we're full. But it makes my heart grow too that so many people value what we do at Maple Grove and why we do it. So appreciative of that.
Yeah, it must feel so rewarding, but also heartbreaking to say, I'm sorry you cannot, but we're doing some pretty cool things. So I get it. But no, it's one of those tough decisions you have to make as an administrator and as an educator. But I love that you guys are pushing through and you got through those growing pains and you've become the success that you are now, which is why you get so many applicants. So that's so awesome to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am blown away by those numbers. And usually, especially in environmental education, outdoor learning, numbers aren't the point, right? The point are the experiences and the opportunities. But it just goes to show you how much even parents value the opportunities that Maple Grove offers for their learners. And hopefully, with numbers like that, other schools in the district, elementary schools might think about integrating more outdoor learning opportunities to, incentivize some of the same engagement. With that, I would love to pick your brain, Sandy, of course, and ask you a little bit about the stories or examples or some of the other experiences you have had integrating place-based learning into curriculum and how integrating that has positively impacted students. And, even if there's negativity or barriers as well, we like to hear about the good and the bad because we know that as much as we are all advocates of outdoor learning, there are some hiccups in the process.
Absolutely. And that's a really great question. So some of the ways that they've been integrated, often I'll ask a teacher if I only get a few weeks with a school. So sometimes a coaching cycle may be 6 weeks. And that's a really short time to be working with a teacher when we take his or her students outdoors. And, it's whatever topic they're on. So some of them have been a little bit challenging when they're hard physical sciences like energy and solar energy, sound, light, heat. On the surface, that seems like that's a really challenging subject to take out into the environment. And we also like to make sure that we think about the setting, the place of the school. The place is there and nature is there year round. And we don't want to shy away from being outdoors with students in the winter because that is a significant chunk of the academic year. So one unit that comes to mind is one that I've done with a 4th grade class in Green Bay. And we were studying energy as it relates to, the types of energy with heat, light, sound, chemical energy, kinetic energy. And we tied that into a unit on animal adaptations and how they survive in the cold Wisconsin winters. And, conserving their heat, their energy dense foods. And what we did, there's an acronym, it's SCREW, SCREW, and it stands for snow, cold, radiation, energy, and wind, those factors in the winter that make survival really difficult. And how do animals survive and contend with all of those screw factors? And that was a really great unit. We even did some animal tracking with that and how, the contact with the snow, you can trace the movement, the kinetic energy, the motion, and then even how some animals, like the warmth of their foot, will melt into the snow. So there were so many connections in that unit of study to those physical science topics. Another one, earth science, lends itself really well to study of water and wind and its interactions with the earth. You do a unit with 5th grade at Maple Grove Charter School, and this is a common area of study across 5th grades everywhere because the national next generation science standards are like the interactions of all the spheres, as they call them. You can observe how water is moving across the land on a schoolyard by, looking for debris, the debris field and the path of water as it moves from a higher point to a lower point, and what is it carrying with it, and what settles out is deposited. So you can almost trace little mini watersheds. I like to have schools, if they can, if they're nearer to a body of water, let's take a water walk and see how the water we carry, we pour little bits of it out and we watch it flow. And when I was a classroom teacher, this was the most impactful lesson with my students, is when another field educator took my class on a water walk and we ended at the Fox River, which is the lowest point in Appleton. So this works really well no matter what watershed you're in. I did this with a 2nd grade class in Neenah just a few weeks ago, and we traced the water down to Little Lake Butamore, their neighborhood body of water. And then kids realized, like, oh, everything goes there. The water and loose soil and litter and pollutants. So they're very motivated to teach others why they should care about water, care about the land, so that we keep our soils held in place with trees and other plants, and we don't leave things out to be washed into our storm drains and waterways. We pick up our litter and pick up our dog waste and dispose of these things properly. Bird study lends itself to so many different areas of adaptations, structures, also, the migratory patterns and behaviors and interactions among species. Robin has a 1st grade class that raises hens, incubates hens' eggs, and watches that whole cycle as that chick develops. And they also observe nests in the nest boxes that a 1st grade class had constructed with community partners, so they can watch wild birds have that same process.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for talking about all of the ways that we can integrate outdoor learning into existing curriculum. And I would love to hear from you, Robin, about how taking learning outdoors has positively impacted your students and maybe some of the changes you've seen even over the course of a school year in children's either health or attitudes or learning behaviors as well.
So taking us back to when we first started with Sandy and our teachers taking students outside we have outdoor labs is what we call them on Fridays. So they're 60 to 90 minute outdoor labs that our students go on. And then throughout the week, the labs are 30 to 45 minutes. They can take them outdoors, of course, during that time, but sometimes those are inside and just preparing for that Friday lab, that Friday outdoor lab. So, but when we first started with taking kids out on Fridays, I don't know, Sandy, if you remember back to this, but I remember observing as a principal, and it was kids, coming outside for 60 to 90 minutes. It was, what sticks can we pick up? What rocks? Where are we going to run to? How are we going to go play? And it was going outside for recess. That's what they wanted. It wasn't initially about, hey, we're out here to learn and explore and find new things that we can then take back and discover more about. And we thought, how are kids going to transition? Are they going to transition? And it was amazing to watch throughout that first year, students discover the learning behind being outdoors and the learning environment. Yeah, they still play and discover and have fun during recesses and even at that time are interacting with nature. They are building forts in the woods and they are building dams in the stream and trying to filtrate water during their recess time. But they just discovered that this is a time for me to discover. This is a time for me to explore, and I'm learning at the same time. I remember a kid saying to me, "Who knew that you could learn and have fun at the same time?" And so just really like heartwarming to see that transformation. But we at Maple Grove follow CRISP traits is what we call them. So they're character traits. So that's really what we live and breathe at Maple Grove. And it stands for craftsmanship, respect, integrity, stewardship, and perseverance. All those things encompass our outdoor learning. And we talk a lot about stewardship. What does that look like? And it has been so evident, not only in the school, but I will hear from parents, "Hey, my kid was walking through the Menards parking lot and saw this water bottle sitting there and they picked it up and they're like, don't people have better stewardship than this?" Our kindergartners, as young as they are, by week 2, they're speaking that language. They're using those vocabulary words and they know exactly what that means. We really address that and use that. Our kids aren't just exploring the outdoors, but they're learning work ethic and perseverance. They're learning patience by just waiting for the bird sound, waiting for the insect to come in. They are learning how to be kind humans. And I think that is so important as well, that we are developing kids at that age to respect their environment around them, not only indoors, but outdoors. And I feel that the kids at Maple Grove truly do respect it and they want to help out and they want to be the ones to ask the teacher, "Hey, can I go check the trail cams?" Or, "Oh, I noticed that log is across the trail. Can we go, help and move that?" Or, "Hey, I noticed that the chickens need more of this," and they will go do that. When we do our maple syrup season, there is 5-gallon buckets that these kindergartners are carrying, that our 5th graders are developing ways to carry these buckets by taking sticks that are laying on the ground and using them as harnesses with 2 pails on the side, or they're each having an end of the stick and helping each other carry these buckets and dump them. I have just seen so much more community building and family building between the learners with our outdoor environment, and they're excited to be there and excited to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know that I would love to go to school and tap maple trees and carry maple syrup and see the whole process. So I can imagine experiences like those make students excited to go to school and learn.
And it's what they remember. Those are the experiences I remember going to Maple Grove Charter School, and I think they're important. We are still very traditional in our math and literacy delivering of curriculum, and I feel that's important too. Students still need to have those experiences, but to make them well-rounded, I feel that the outdoor learning piece helps them to be well-rounded humans and respect what's around them.
And adding on to the benefits. So Robin, you've stated the benefits for the students, and I echo that. And I also want to say the benefits of being a teacher in a school like that, like Maple Grove, or, maybe you're not as fortunate to teach in a school where, everyone's on board and being an environmental educator and taking students out, but you personally are. So if you can find the short moments to take the students out, maybe it's a few minutes tagging on to, picking your students up from the bus line or after the lunch period, and you take the long way around the building to get back in, and the students have a learning experience. They've been set up for it in advance. They're going to use their observational skills. It's just bringing that awareness and slowing down and having that sense of wonder. And, as great Rachel Carson said, growing that sense of wonder when there's that adult who is fostering that with a child. Well, when it's an adult fostering it for the whole class, you become part of that community. You are part of that place. That place means so much to you. And that's why the students are picking up, the logs and they're caring about it and they notice. And that spreads to caring about the people in the community along with the wild things and the wild places. And I can't tell you how much my teaching changed and how my sense of place changed when I, started in that role of an environmental educator. I had taught in the Appleton area school district for 15 years before I implemented with my colleague the environmental focus. And there were things that I didn't know about the city and the waterways of the Fox River and park systems and the wildlife until I was out there learning it right alongside the kids. And I'll tell you, when people see that the teacher and the students are out and they're walking through the community or they're driving past and they wonder and they'll start to talk to you, they'll engage. The students are more than willing to volunteer information on what we're out there doing and why we're learning. It's such great connections to the community. They see where their tax dollar is going. They understand that these kids know some things and their language levels and their literacy levels. You can tell that they've been well read about it. It reaps rewards and people from the community start coming to you with ideas, volunteering their time. Sometimes say like, hey, our organizations, we fund projects like this. Would you be interested in? So starting small can grow into very big opportunities, and it has such a big impact on the kids and the adults.
If another school wanted to begin taking learning outdoors, and I don't know how they couldn't after hearing your guys' stories, but can you guys speak a little to the biggest misconceptions or barriers they should be prepared to overcome? This can go for either of you.
You can start as small as taking them outside with their books, taking a read aloud out to the environment, just having them outside in the environment, having a moment to write in a notebook or take their writing activity outside, I think is where you could start small. And one of the best things in the BioBlitz that the kids talked about after the BioBlitz was we don't use technology a ton at Maple Grove. We do have a set of iPads, and they loved being able to take the iPads outside and just taking pictures of things they discovered in the woods and then showing it to other kids like, hey, look at what I found, or look at this. This is weird. And just being able to talk about it only just brings that imagination and the intrigueness that they want to learn more and want to know more and ask the I notice, I wonder questions. And that not only is in our literacy curriculum, but also in our lab experiences as well. So I think as simple as that, what do you notice? What do you wonder about? And taking them right out the back door. We are very fortunate to be in an area where we are in rural Hamburg with all the sights and smells of dairy all around us and tractors driving by and just different things like that. So the curiosity is there, but I'm sure in a city as well, as Sandy can attest to, you can have those same kind of questions.
One of the barriers that I hear come up is teachers say, I don't really know anything about this. So kind of thinking that I might not have anything to offer in terms of being able to teach kids outside, because we've all been in awe of those experiences that have been led by a professional or a volunteer naturalist. So just understanding, like, you as a teacher, you are the lead learner. You are the teacher, yes. But when you're going into something that you don't know a lot about, you know how to learn. You have learned, how do I approach something that I don't know a lot about, right? You pull in your background knowledge. You start making some observations, which lead to some questions. Those are the routines Robin was talking about, right? I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. And then thinking about, okay, this is what I've noticed. Maybe I'm jotting it down using my camera. Where can we find out more about? It's an inquiry process. So if you approach it that way, you will not fail. I assure you, you will not fail. And, taking the book as an example, FIELD Edventures, we have a few books on our EEK website, which stands for Environmental Education for Kids. So you can Google that and find Environmental Education for Kids. It looks like eek, like the scary eek, a spider, but once you observe a spider outside, you'll never say that again. So we've got examples of books that the educator can read inside or outside the classroom with the students, and then some suggestions of like, okay, how can this story launch an investigation on my school site? So that's a place to start. We've got some great stories. Xia and Jaeden, you're collecting these wonderful stories, and some of them are also available on the Green and Healthy Schools Wisconsin site, some school stories. WiseLearn resources library. There are many examples of, we've got through FIELD Edventures and some grants that we've worked with schools who have received those grant awards. There are lessons on WiseLearn for mathematics and taking math into nature, science lessons, nature journaling, ELA, and we also have a really robust collection of learning units in our culturally relevant text sets. So those are some places where you can go to get ideas. And of course, FIELD Edventures, we would love to hear from any teacher that is wanting to do more and take a learning outside, and we can get you connected with people in your community to do that. So if you've got ideas and you want to do it, please don't let money, don't let your experience, don't learn what your perceived skill level is to keep you from doing it, because all students, they deserve it to be able to learn outside. And as teachers, you deserve it too.
I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are scared to get started in this type of stuff and they don't know what to do, so they might get overwhelmed. So I think having those resources is such a useful tool. And like you said, Robin, even starting small, like these kids are so fascinated by like quite literally a rock. Like, and in that childlike wonder is like, I feel like the reason a lot of these educators get into this field, just taking that moment and telling yourself, I notice, I wonder, why do you think the kid is so excited about looking at this rock that happened to just break off, which might just be a piece of stone from the building? But nevertheless, they're excited. So I think it's just such an awesome mindset to have for these types of situations.
And Sandy, I know you had mentioned that educators could kind of get started with FIELD Edventures in taking their students outside. How would you recommend someone reach out to you or reach out to FIELD Edventures to start that partnership?
Well, that's a great question. So please check out our website, fieldedventures.org. It's all one word. And remember, Edventures is with an E because it's an educational adventure. And you can also join our community at connectexploreengage.org. The EEs are together. So don't forget both E's in there for Explore Engage back to back, because it's environmental education, EE.
Yeah, thank you both so much for taking your guys' time out of your very busy end of school season to share your guys' story. It's been such a wonderful time having you both here and hearing about FIELD Edventures and Maple Grove Charter School. But before we head out, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about where people can go to learn more about what you guys are doing?
I would just like to give a shout out to FIELD Edventures because I think they have helped to grow Maple Grove School and grow what we really believe that kids should experience every day and being out in the environment. And so a shout out to FIELD Edventures and Sandy Benton for helping Maple Grove make that transition and bring the learning outside. Our kids have thoroughly enjoyed it, and we have so many new things for them to explore, like our bird houses and bat houses and owl houses, our bird feeders, and all those things came because of the work that we were able to do with them. So a shout out to them. And as Sandy had talked about, once you bring kids outside and community members go by and see that, they are asking questions. And we have that same thing happening all the time. I have met many of the neighbors in the rural community that have come now and wanted to be a part of what we're doing and offer their expertise. And we have even invited them back this summer for our summer learning program to come and talk about forestry and talk about their rock collections and just bring those expertise to all of our learners now that are participating in our summer learning. So most definitely just exploring the outdoors and bringing learning outside is so important for every child. So thank you.
And the last thing that I would like to do is a shout out to Robin and the entire Maple Grove community and staff and the students for jumping in and being so willing to take up this outdoor learning. And it's so great to be, partnering with Green and Healthy Schools Wisconsin Association for Environmental Education, the Wisconsin Center for Environmental Ed at Stevens Point, Victoria Ryberg Nania at DPI. It's a network. So part of what FIELD Edventures is like connecting these people. Another thing that we can offer is connecting schools with other schools. And Robin, I know you've met some schools that are doing similar work, and other educators are coming to you, looking to you for some guidance and advice along the way. We can help facilitate that. The ways that you would contact me, you can do that, and I can connect you with people too.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to share your stories and share with our listeners the amazing work that you both are doing across the state. And with that, our listeners, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment or question. And until next time, we hope you stay connected to your community, explore the world around you, and engage to make a difference.
If you enjoyed this episode of Healthier, Happier, Smarter, please take a moment to follow the podcast and leave us a rating or review. It helps more people discover the show and enjoy the conversation about connecting health, learning, and the natural world. You can also stay connected with the Wisconsin Association for Environmental Education at waee.org, or find us on social media for resources, upcoming events, or more stories from educators and community leaders across Wisconsin. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and learning.